So I've gotten to the last slip stitch of this row, so I'm going to chain one for the corner into that same stitch, slip stitch again, and now I'm just going to slip stitch across this last part until I get to the final corner. Okay, so now I'm at the last slip stitch of this side, so I'm going to chain one for the last corner, insert my hook into that first slip stitch that I made, and slip stitch again. And now I'm going to cut a long tail, pull my yarn through so that I can sew this on later. And I'm going to pull the tail toward the back of the work. So the next part I'm going to show you how to do is one of these rectangle shaped parts that looks like it's got like a bite taken from it or something from the corner. So to do that, I'm going to take my gray heather yarn. I'm going to make a slip knot. Then I'm going to insert my hook into that slip knot. And I'm going to chain 16. Okay, now I've chained 16, so I'm going to double crochet into the 4th chain from the hook. So I'm going to yarn over, and then in that 4th chain, pull up a loop and double crochet. Now I'm going to double crochet in every stitch until I get to the end of the row. So I've gotten to the end of the row. I'm going to chain up 2 to get to the next row, and I'm going to turn the work around. And now I'm going to continue to double crochet across this row, and I'm going to continue adding more rows until I have 6 rows in total. So I've gotten to the end of my 6 rows of double crochet. So now I'm going to do the part of the corner that's cut out. And to do that, I'm going to first chain up to get to my next row and turn the work around. And instead of crocheting in the next stitch, I'm going to skip this one and crochet in this 3rd stitch here. But instead of crocheting double crochet, I'm going to do a single crochet. So I'm going to insert my hook, pull up a loop, and single crochet. And now I'm going to continue double crocheting until the end of the row. Okay, so now I've gotten to the end of this row, and now I'm going to chain up to get to the next row, turn the work around, and now I'm going to double crochet until I get back to that cutaway corner. So I've gotten back to this cutaway corner. As you can see, here are my 3 chains, and here's my single crochet and my double crochet next to that. So I have 3 more loops left on the row. So I'm going to double crochet one more time, and then in the next 2 stitches, I'm going to crochet together. So I'm going to yarn over, pull up a loop, and pull through 2. Then I'm going to yarn over again into the next stitch, pull up a loop, and pull through 2. Then I'm going to pull through all 3. And now as you can see, there's that little cutaway in the corner. So I'm going to chain up to get to the next row. Now I'm going to turn the work around and double crochet until I get to the end of the row. Okay, so I'm on the last stitch of the row. So now I'm going to do a row of slip stitches all the way around, like I have done with all of my other pieces so far. So the first thing I'm going to do is make a corner. So I'm going to chain 1, and then into the same stitch, I'm going to insert my hook, pull up a loop, and slip stitch. Okay, and now I'm going to continue slip stitching until I get to the next corner. So now I'm on the last slip stitch of this side of the piece. So now I'm going to chain 1. Oops. So now I'm going to chain 1, and then into that same stitch I'm going to slip stitch again to make the corner. Okay. And now I'm going to continue to slip stitch across this row until I get to the corner opposite the one that I just did. And then I'm going to make another corner. Okay, so I'm at the last slip stitch of this row, so I'm going to chain 1 and slip stitch into the same space. And then I'm going to continue slip stitching on this other side until I get to the opposite corner, so I can slip stitch along that cutaway part of this square. Okay, so I've gotten to that part that's cut away, and I'm going to add another corner here. So I'm going to chain 1, and into the same stitch I'm going to pull up a loop and slip stitch again. And now I'm going to slip stitch all along this cutaway part until I get to this spot where I'm going to add another corner. Okay, so I've reached that corner. I'm going to chain 1, then into the same stitch I'm going to slip stitch. And now to finish the row, I'm just going to slip stitch all along these top loops until I get to that first corner that I made. Okay, so I've gotten to that corner. I'm just going to slip stitch one last time, pull a really long tail and cut it away. Okay, and now I'm going to pull the tail to the back of the work. And now I have my 4 corner pieces made. And the last piece I want to show you how to make is this heart, but I have made a separate tutorial for that you can go and watch by clicking on the annotation on the screen, and then when you're done you can come back to this tutorial and finish the rest of the work. So I'll see you when you finish making one of these hearts. So now I'm going to sew all of the pieces together, but first I'm going to sew on the heart to the circle. And you just want to make sure that the circle is just about centered and try to keep the bottom of your work at the bottom of the piece. So I'm going to line up the heart with the circle. And now I'm just going to stick my needle through to the back. And I'm just going to sew on, going into all of these slip stitches that I made around the heart. And I'm going to go straight through to the back of the work. And now I'm just going to continue to trace these slip stitches until I get all the way around. So I've sewn the heart to the circle, as you can see. So now I'm just going to lay out all of the gray heather parts on top of the square so that you can see where to sew all of those parts. And then I'm just going to sew all of those together. So you start with putting the circle at the very center of the piece, and then take your 4 rectangles, take each one and place it at the bottom of the pink stripe all the way around. And then the square that has the cutaway corners, going to arrange all of them in the corners. And this is the pattern that you're going to want to sew on all of your pieces in. So I finished sewing on these 4 rectangular pieces to the tops of the pink part, and now I'm going to sew these squares with the cutaway corner to the corners. So I'm just going to place each one so that the cutaway corner is facing this circle. And then, just like I did before with all of the other gray heather pieces, I'm going to sew all of these in place. And it'll look something like that when it's done. As you can see now, I'm done with both sides, sewing all of the parts together. Now, if you wanted to make a 6-sided cube, you'd have to make, obviously, 6 sides instead of just 2. But I'm just going to make 2. And now the next step is going to be to sew both sides together. So I'm going to go along 3 sides, and then once I finish the 3rd side, I'm going to stuff the 2 together. Then I'm going to sew closed the top. So I'm just going to start at this top corner here, and I'm only going to sew the gray parts together. And then after that, I'm going to sew the charcoal parts together with my charcoal gray. And then after that, I'm going to come back and sew together these light gray pieces. So, just going to insert my hook into this corner. I mean my needle, not my hook. And now I'm going to continue to sew back and forth until the 2 sides are joined completely. So now I've finished with sewing all of the sides together. So now I'm going to sew around the sides once again, this time with my light gray yarn. I'm going to sew these 2 gray pieces together so that there's no space between the two. And I'm going to do that to every gray piece all the way around, every light gray piece. And then after I'm done sewing them together, I'm going to sew in the tails. So as you can see, I've finished sewing everything together and I finished stuffing the cube as well. I hope you liked this tutorial, and if you would like to see more, then please subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!